it's okay. We'd love it if they have the opportunity to come up and kind of add to our presentation.
Sure. Good morning, Chair Marcus and other board members. Thanks for this opportunity to address you. As David mentioned, American Rivers has been working with the Nature Conservancy and the Northern California Water Association and its membership to explore ways that we might be able to work together to improve ecological conditions in the Sacramento Basin and tributaries, and contribute to and complement the board's effort to update the water quality control plan. We're working to explore ways to, as I said, advance the ecological conditions there, actions that we might be able to implement sooner rather than later, no regrets types actions that have a consensus of support. We're also working to develop concepts that might contribute to a more effective implementation of the water quality control plan in a timely manner, focusing on ways to identify the who, what, when, where, how of the measures that would be required to meet the objectives in the new plan. Of course, we are not replacing the board's process in any way, but the intent is to contribute to and complement the work that you all and the staff are doing. We don't expect to, of course, be able to address all of the beneficial uses, don't plan to do that, and even for any one beneficial use, we imagine that there will be measures beyond the scope of what we're trying to do together that would be necessary to meet those and protect those beneficial uses. But we're encouraged with the conversations that we've been having to date. There's a lot more work to do. We're still very much at the conceptual level. And I know American Rivers and TNC look forward to engaging our conservation partners in this conversation at some point when we're at a place where it makes sense to do that, and welcome their input, just as we have done on the San Joaquin Basin conversation that American Rivers and others have been engaged with the water users and other parties down there. So, thank you.
Good morning. Madam Chair, members of the board, Jay Ziegler. I'm the Director of Policy and External Affairs at the Nature Conservancy, and thanks for entertaining us briefly this morning to give you a brief update on our dialogue. As I noted at the last workshop, the Nature Conservancy is now celebrating 25 years of work in the Sacramento River watershed, and we do that with an eye toward multiple habitat benefits, taking the unique flyway contributions that effective water management brings to retain the vitality of the Pacific Flyway, as well as ecological values for riparian, wetland, and upland habitat. And so our work is generally focused on holistic natural system benefits and seeking ways in which we can effectively re-engineer water management, if you will, for the benefit of people and nature. And so in that context, we're excited to be a part of that, this dialogue with NACWA agencies and American Rivers, and hope that in some way we can, as Steve noted, bring projects forward that really represent smarter ecological management, measurable outcomes, and define benefits for species of concern in the system. And we believe that also we can help to better inform the broader public, in addition to the active stakeholders that assume that we're doing a lot of these things already, in smarter conjunctive use water management, groundwater monitoring and management, and as Lewis noted earlier, some of the pulse flow dynamics that will in and of themselves require some reservoir reoperation that also incorporates smarter storage and release operations that we think really merit consideration. And so we look forward to a continuing dialogue at the board as well as with staff. I noted that we have participated in some of the fall workshops in presenting our ecological flow tool modeling. We're moving toward completion of that work and hope that that can inform the board's process as well as our own dialogue here. So thank you for your continued work and updating the water quality plan, and we look forward to continued engagement with you.
Right. Are you going to let Kurt talk, or is he just here to look smart?
Well, he's welcome, I think.
It's interesting. This is a little walk down memory lane listening to what Lewis is doing. I mean, we're in the fortunate position of you know, having the UBO Accord and have addressed a lot of these issues. This very issue about fall flood up is one that we addressed in the UBO Accord. We're very proud of, you know, the accomplishments. Gary Bobker has been part of those discussions in the past and others and stuff. And, you know, it's good to see, you know, the same type of work. And I think everybody knows a lot of this is all about relationships and trust, and that's the good part about these collaborations, American Rivers, TNC, and others, is to get those relationships going, because that's our experience where you really start solving these issues and working together to find win-win solutions. And we're proud of the work that you know, we've had with the Accord. There's the River Management Team Symposium. You know, we're not only confirming that the decisions made in the Accord were the good ones, the flows are protective of the environment, but we're also on the cutting edge of new science and looking at new issues, and that'll help us, you know, move forward on other actions that we can do. And, you know, it's nice to be in the position where, you know, we did balance the co-equal goals of the environment. We actually said, what water do the fish need first? And then we looked at the irrigation needs, and it's not only irrigation needs for Yuba County, but it's also the groundwater resource. We have an extensive conjunctive use program, but our municipal load is groundwater source. So if you don't have the surface water for the farmers, then you lose the groundwater for the people, and we've just been fortunate to, you know, have worked with the board, have good favorable decisions that allow us to have these multiple benefits and go forward. And it's good to see that kind of the path that we led there for a while is being picked up by others, and the same techniques and processes are moving forward.
Right. Yeah, when we were doing our reports yesterday, I was thinking I should report that I went to the whole Yuba River Symposium, and I flatter myself to think I actually understood more of the science than I thought I would. But it was inspiring to see this collective of people from across the spectrum who had started out as antagonists and had somehow managed to forge a very respectful relationship, but based it on data and science and common viewing of the science and a common objective of maximizing beneficial uses. I think in many respects our job would be a lot easier if there were more places where people were trying to do this, because the local knowledge across the spectrum between water users, advocates for ecological values and other values have come together, really getting to know a place and understand the other's point of view. We have our role in the ecosystem of getting this work done, and I do think that the work that this board's done in the past and will do in the future has a valuable role in either inspiring that type of cooperation to get ahead of the curve or to do better than we could do, as well as to guarantee the bottom line for the public to make sure that somebody's paying attention. I think we're coming into more complicated and challenging times for many of the reasons Mr. Jennings opened the day with, and the work that you all are doing is really makes my heart happy, just because it's a puzzle of those kinds of efforts that are very real, very focused on results that are going to get us further faster. So our work is very heavily influenced by what it is you do as we put together a puzzle, and you also inspire others who, I'll just say, aren't quite so evolved in their thinking about what collectively as a society our goals are. So very important. Questions, please, go ahead.
And I did not go to the Yuba science panel and our program, so so perhaps this got addressed there, and you can inform me. I know when you did the Yuba Accord, you were, of course, looking at the Yuba River and really didn't look so much out into the Delta and the interaction with the Delta. Are you starting to, kind of move in that direction, or how would you advise us in, when river systems get set up beautifully, but they are connected to other less beautiful systems, what do we do?
Yeah. So our primary focus was on the Yuba River,
Right.
but we've also found that, part of the health of the salmonid population is tied to the Delta, and the more things we can do to produce larger numbers outmigrants and more successful spawning is helpful overall. We've tried to add to, the data, the facts, and the science by saying, what different proposals would how it would impact not only the Yuba River but the Delta, and some of that's the unimpaired flow stuff. I think we were probably the first ones that did extensive analysis on that, and we went first to our environmental friends and shared the data with them because, quite frankly, we wanted to test it, and we wanted to see, were we presenting this in the right way, and we showed, we got some impact, but we spread those presentations around and showed what the impacts were. There are times where the Yuba Accord provides great benefit for the Delta and stuff. So, yeah, our focus has been on, the Yuba River itself, but just one of the outcomes of the Yuba Accord is our coordination with the state and federal water projects, and so they now know what we're releasing. It's kind of one of these common sense things, aren't you doing that already type of a thing? I mean, we did the same thing on flood control. And so we have further communication, and so I see it as a very synergistic system. It's like Lewis said, you poke here, it's going to pop out there, and we have looked, and then that's why we're together with NCWA and with TNC, American Rivers, and others, is to look at, how do we better meld into that whole pot and work things out in the future, because we've got to find solutions for all this stuff, and we're a believer that, if you got the leadership there, and it takes that from all parties. Felicia, that was one of the things that made the Accord go forward. It was the leadership to say, there's a better way to do this. I can remember sitting in the audience of the state board hearings next to Banky Curtis, the region manager for DFG, and it said, there's got to be a better way to do this, and we did it. And it's through discussions like this and work on a collaborative basis that we do go beyond the Yuba River and get into the Delta environment. It's all connected.
Yeah, sure.
Wondering if you could comment, and maybe others, on the issue of coordination. It seems to have worked well for you, and I'd like to better understand. You have a river management team. And then you also talked about that you coordinate with the state and federal agencies. Is it through that river management team or some other,
There's
just more informal process?
There's different aspects of coordination. I'd kind of put them in three different bins. One's flood management, and that's the most important one for us with the extensive flooding that we've had in the past. And so we've worked with DWR, the National Weather Service, the Corps of Engineers, YCWA, and Oroville Operations, and we've developed the Forecasted Coordinated Operations Program. And that program has modeled our flood control rules, and it's all about how do we put out the most water in advance of the peak flows, shave off the peak, and make the system work good. And it is just a great tool. I know you're not involved in that, but I'd love to, I can talk about that for hours, but we've advanced that science substantially. And a lot of public assistance grant money has gone into that, in the order of $10 million to do that. The second area I would say is where we have coordination closest with the fishery agencies, the environmental organizations, other participants in the Accord. And really the purpose of the river management team was to say, we got all these people together and they used their, best science, facts, and opinions to put together the Accord flow schedules. And were they indeed protective of the environment as intended? And that was one of the outcomes of the river management team, as their interim measurement and evaluation report. And here, what we were able to do, because there's a transfer component in the Yuba Accord, we were able to fund $550,000 a year towards the river management team to pick up basic science and to answer this question: are the flows protective? And so the river management team is largely focused on that, but when we have operational issues at our facility, we'll bring those operational issues to the river management team and say, how do we best coordinate our operations? And it might be because you have a unit go down for some reason, or you're looking at a water transfer and something happens, and so you got to make some adjustments to the original plans. And all of our water transfers, do go through the river management team, get their concurrence for the flow schedules and stuff. And so that's the second place we work. And then the third place we work is with actual operators. And so, for example, today at 11 o'clock we have a coordination operations call. There's the Bureau's operator on it, there's DWR, there's YCWA, and we talk about, what flows are upcoming, for our purposes, what's happening with our power systems, how that impacts the system at all, what are the different issues within the system, and we work through the issues that relate, to the flows and the water transfers. And I'm sure, knowing in advance of what we're doing, much like Lewis was talking about, is you can integrate the systems together, and you can make adjustments on, for example, what's happening on the American or what's happening on Oroville to provide the Delta water needs, having a sense of certainty of what the Yuba flows are. And so that's been a very good experience in working through those. And sometimes it's every couple of weeks we call, and then other times, there's not much going on. It's pretty static conditions, and it might be 2 or 3 months before we have a call.
And
there
was
are probably
that
times when it's every day, too.
Yeah.
was that the coordinations operations call that you have? Was that an outgrowth of the Accord, or is this something that has been
It's an outgrowth
going
of
along?
the Accord, and it probably started out as being, how do you account for the water that's being released? And one of the things that we did in the Accord is the very makeup of it was, really 3 different contracts. There's the fisheries agreement, which protects the fish in the Yuba River and gives them the good habitat that they're getting with the Accord. The second agreement was a conjunctive use agreement, and that was with our member units. We serve water to 8 irrigation districts. 7 of them signed up with the Accord, and that's how do we, operate the system. And for example, like Lewis said, in the fall flood up, that's something that we carried from the fisheries issues into working with our member units to come up with agreements of how do we manage those fall flood ups. And then the third thing is there's an extensive groundwater substitution water transfer program that goes on. For example, this year 70,000 acre feet will occur, and so that's happening there. And then the third agreement is the water supply agreement, and that's where we coordinate the transfers. The Accord is really built on changing in-stream flow requirements in a way that benefit the fish, but also those changes could be incorporated into actual water transfers. And we worked with actually our contracts with DWR, but we worked closely with the Bureau in setting up the whole program, and there's state and federal water contractors that we worked with. And so the coordination started around the actual accounting of water going out. We produce water in the schedules. If it can get used for transfer, it gets used for transfer and we get paid. If not, then it goes out through the Delta to the ocean and benefits the Delta and ocean in that way. What I found is by us starting to talk about just the Accord flows and the transfer accounting, it's just been a natural occurrence for us to expand those conversations and, gee, what's happening operationally, how's that going to affect flows later in the year? And then I'm certain the state and water projects use that information very effectively to help coordinate their flows. So it's been an evolution of starting out with something small, and it evolves into, a bigger beneficial program for all. Hopefully that helps.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems to me that through these experiences, it's we've created a lot of productive relationships and effects on the ground. And I guess, you know, just to keep it short and sweet, do you see promise for how we might structure the program of implementation within the Bay Delta Plan to encourage coordination along these lines? I mean, it's obviously part of the state board's vision is sustainability. Really, if you read our vision statement, it's pretty simple that the sustainability for California is interrelated with water. And so sustainable implementation of the Bay Delta Plan will be predicated on this kind of cooperative relationship and communication. Have you been thinking about ways that we could structure our program of implementation to encourage coordination? Because we appreciate, the board members appreciate a certain degree of voluntary cooperation, certainly. But, you know, is there some kind of structure where we could compel or otherwise provide incentive for this type of coordination throughout the valley?
David, if I could just kind of start out on this, I'll turn it over to you. Because of our success, you know, one of the things that was asked in the San Joaquin discussions is Paul Barkowitz came down, I think Chuck Bonham came down, Art Baggett was, you know, at the board at the time of the Yuba Accord, and we talked about the Accord model and how it worked, and you know, the systems are different, but maybe there's some tools out of the model that you know, we use that could help that process, and it's all about relationships and stuff, and so we've helped in that way. And then, you know, we're helping on a larger basis, and I think I'll turn it over to David and Louis if he has any comments.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That's a great question. I mean, I think just to start, I mean, I like the idea of a program of implementation because by its terms it suggests action, right? It does. It's not a plan. It's not something that's going to sit here until the next time, you know, a triennial review comes around. So we're pretty excited about that, as you know. I think there's a variety of tools under that. I think the most powerful, quite honestly, is I think your ability to bring folks like us in front of you to provide, you know, reports, updates, to push us, to bring us together. I think that is a really powerful function of this board, and I think through the program of implementation, I think you have some great opportunities to do that. We've talked a little bit before at the last meeting about, you know, is it 13267 and, you know, some of the opportunities there. I know there's some different kind of legal views on that, but the most powerful thing is that I think it allows you as a board to be as aggressive on that as you would like. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there that we encourage you to explore and utilize that authority as much as you can.
We're having 13.
Yes.
What, 13,247 tattoos.
Yes.
Made for.
Nice. The official tattoo at
They
the
might
State
be
Water
temporary
Board.
tattoos at first.
That's right.
On advice of counsel.
Oh
Anna.
man. Well, that's awesome. And then I think, you know, again, I think if you go back, I think the most important thing though is follow through. I mean, my sense is that, you know, as you go back and look at some of the earlier drafts of these plans, I mean, there's all these good things that are in the water quality control plan update, and then, like, you know, human nature says, as soon as it's adopted, the next day everybody moves on to something else, right? And there isn't that follow through. And I guarantee you we're here today to commit to you to follow through in all of these pieces, and I guess we hope that you will use your kind of pulpit to really help us do that and to work with the sister agencies and do all of those things. So I think the program of implementation is a great and probably underutilized tool in your arsenal.
And if I could just add one comment, I think what was very effective in the Yuba Accord, I remember Chairman Baggett saying, bring us a solution. And, you know, that had a lot of impact in that statement in terms of, you know, I believe you send the signal and you allow the parties to work out solutions. Because when you get Louis talking to the Bureau and talking to the farmers, I think you get more creative, you understand the problems better, you understand, you know, parties' interest, and if you send the signal and give the flexibility for, you know, the people to bring back solutions to you, I think that's a really effective model of how to go forward.
Yeah, my thoughts on this are you've got to you got to have ownership. You know, right now the plan of implementation doesn't have that commitment to ownership from the folks that are going to execute, and so that's primary, I think. And then that we all realize we're independent, and that ownership can recognize that commitment to interdependency for those that are going to be necessary to accomplish the goal. And then finally, you got to have accountability. You know, you got to bring us forward and say, "Hey, where you at, Lewis?" And you know, that often gets us motivated. So it's really it's ownership, I think, is the key.
I appreciate that in terms of we want to compel the activity, the accountability, but allow for the creativity. And I guess I find myself agreeing with Art Baggett insofar as I've said something similar a lot of times where, you know, as a water board, whether at regional or even state level, if we are brought solutions that have, let's say, buy-in from the spectrum of interests, that gets on the uncontested calendar, you know, and I as a one board
You may be
member,
hoping for a lot.
as one board member, you know, I would
go that
commit
far.
to trying to get items on the uncontested calendar whenever possible. Thank you. Hey, they were saying that about
Dream,
Chevron
right?
in the Bay Area from the 90s, and that was on the uncontested calendar a year and a half ago. Thanks.
I think from the NGO perspective, I think that in essence what we're working on are a series of collaborative conservation measures. And so that as we begin to design that package and work with the wildlife agencies to ensure that there's kind of a common set of monitoring and evaluation measures for the effectiveness of our work, and to see how that actually engages a wider public dialogue, wider engagement of stakeholders on the river. I think some of that architecture becomes helpful in the board's evaluation of how we're doing in improving the ecological health of the system. So I think the framework that you're articulating here in terms of looking at a meaningful contribution to actually bringing additional transparency, engagement, resources, and engagement of the agencies is really all an important part of the package. So we look forward to kind of continuing to re-engage with you, and as Lewis said, in evaluating how we're doing.
Go ahead. Sure.
Well, thank you all. It's just terrific to see you all here together and working towards some common and collaborative solutions. What I think would be useful is going back to the earlier presentation from staff as far as the time frame in moving forward. In the meantime, you all are moving forward, and I think it'd be useful to hear from you again and maybe bring us some additional meat on the bones, so to speak. You know, specifically, what else are you targeting? What are your own goals in terms of your time frame? And I think it'd be helpful for us to see just how well things can move along in the meantime as we're developing a plan with the program of implementation. How quickly can you move when you have this collaborative approach? And, you know, no hammer over your head other than the fact that you know that we're going to act. And that should also help us as we move forward in terms of the specifics that we include in the program of implementation.
Yeah, that would be great. If for nothing else than our mental health as we go through this highly contested process. That's well said. I also think it's important. I really do think, as some of the earlier speakers have said, Mr. Jennings first, I mean, there's a question to be called here. There are issues to be dealt with, and we have a job to do. But the more of this kind of effort that we can put into and acknowledge in that tapestry of a solution, which gets down to that operational level, that gets ignored at the 64,000 foot rhetorical battle, the more successful we'll be and the better off we'll be. So we both have our roles to play in parallel, but I think all of this is going to have to come together at some point in the next year or so in a different way than it has in the past. And a lot in what you've said suggests part of that, in that it's got to be ongoing, it's got to be accountable. It's not like if we get through and do a control plan and survive a legal challenge, we're done for however many years. This is, we actually do have to integrate in a very more present and constant way at this phase in just the ecological, economic, and other development. Hopefully we're up to the task collectively, and so you all coming in today is something that gives us that shot in the arm, and hopefully we're offering you the respect and acknowledgement that will keep you going, and will hopefully it will all converge, at least partially, in something that's going to stay converged for a long time if we're successful. Great. Any other questions? Well then, as promised, we will take a short break. Let's, I'd say 10, but that's hard when people are trying to get coffee and everything. So let's come back at 5 minutes to 11 for our next presentation.
Still the same tidal mechanism. Still have tides coming in and the water going out.
State, NC, or Duke. Anyway. She doesn't have a card either, and you're both getting I would get that. That's what I said. After, I mean, I think all the way back to 78. I mean, you understand. I mean, how does it the Delta, water quality, and the water rights, you know, and all of the other. I mean, you go through all of this. You go through the mods, opinions, all the array of adaptive management. What do we got? We've got an ecosystem that's different. You know, we have And the only time you got case was when Judge Rockinelli vacated the 78 the board twice. In 88 and 19, that would have led to a discussion. When they say the board is together, I mean, there's a case that two governors told the board under threat of removal, not to release the document. And they didn't release the document. So, you will see what happens. I mean, so I understand that case is going to be more. I'm the executive director of California Sports Administration. I'll be the one suing. I mean, have many times, don't we? One time, but suing the board right now, as a matter of fact. But I mean, we're an organization that deals with water rights and water quality. On the water quality side, I've got 50 appeals for the board. Water rights side. Generally, work with the California Water Impact Network. But I mean, tributary is a ways off. Although there's a lot of processing for processing. Right now, what are you going to happen here? What's exactly what happened here? This staff with this agent, with this board. We work very closely with the administrator. I mean, she used to be on my board. And that's the obligation is to try to let them
All right. Oh. Thank you. It's 5 of 11, and we'll resume in a moment. So please take your seats. I'm trying.
You want to sit at the mic? We can sit at the table. I'm happy to sit wherever, Chad.
I want someone to come with overheads. Oh, he might not.
And we're missing one.
Yes.
Good morning. We're ready to proceed with item number 11.
My name is Tim O'Laughlin. I'm here today representing the Oakdale Irrigation District. Mr. Cannell, the general manager from Oakdale Irrigation District, is in the audience.
He just wants to see how you'll do.
Yeah, it's a grading, it's a grading time. My contract's up for renewal. This is an outgrowth, this presentation, of some discussions that Mr. Birmingham and Mr. Patterson have had with the state board members and state board staff. And they asked if we could put together a brief presentation about the April-May pulse flow that occurred on the San Joaquin River this year. So we've put together a panel. One of our panelists is missing, Mr. Ron Milligan. Hopefully, before too much time expires, he might show up and participate. If not, I will try to give you a perspective of the Bureau from the New Maloney side, at least. So we're going to start first. R will go first and make a presentation on behalf of the San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority et al.
And good morning, and Madam Chair, board members.
See you.
Pleasure to be here today. My name is R. Ashjarian. I'm the Water Policy Administrator for the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority. I think we've all met before. I'm here with my colleague Terry Erlewine today, General Manager of the State Water Contractors. Together, we serve 58 water agencies that rely on water coming from the Central Valley Project, State Water Project, to serve 25 million Californians, the second largest contiguous wetlands in the United States after the Everglades, and approximately 3 million acres of agriculture, prime farmland, provides about 50% of the nation's fruits and vegetables, many of which are produced exclusively or nearly exclusively in our service area. I think everyone's prime interest here today is to hear from Tim and John and Ron, if he makes it, about the Oakdale and South San Joaquin fish agreement this year, and how important that was not only to operations this year, but how that approach, creative and cooperative approach, is a critical approach moving forward. But I'd like to sit down and just take a moment, maybe 10, 15 minutes or so, to sort of lay out the context of why it's important this year and why it's important moving forward, and try to bring a little bit of our reality to this discussion. So if this is working, what I wanted to use to illustrate where we are this year and kind of lay the foundation for all of this is just a current status slide. And so this is a slide produced by the Bureau of Reclamation, and the big blue wave there is Shasta storage average, and then the dark blue line at the top is where we are in 2013, and you can kind of see where it dashes downward there, and that's the forecast for the balance of this year, which is taking us basically to the minimum storage called for in Shasta under the NMFS biological opinion. And then the red line at the bottom is our other historic dry year, 1977, sort of the benchmark we all work with. So telling the story of the West Side CVP Ag Service Contractors. On March 22nd, and for those of you who are wondering, yes, it was a Friday, Reclamation announced an update to its CVP allocation. And essentially, the net result of that was a decrease in allocation for CVP Ag Service Contractors south of the Delta as a result of extremely dry conditions. And it has been extremely dry. January to now, I think you're all aware, is record-setting dryness, certainly on par with 1977. But these systems were built to manage drought and flood, and this year drought. And so how are they managing in the world that we live in today? So there's March 22nd, more or less, and there's our storage level in Shasta, about 3.75 million acre-feet of water sitting in Shasta. And what's hard to see there is that it's slightly above average for that date, based on historical average. So it looks like it's going to manage a dry situation pretty well. And here's where we were in 1977, about 1.25 million acre-feet. So, 2.5 million acre-feet of water in the kitty, that's a good thing, right? And so we're sitting down, we're looking at 77. We had an allocation of 25% plus supplemental water for permanent crops. And so it's kind of hard to imagine, since the reservoirs haven't changed, the rivers, the pumping plants, the canals, the farms, that it could be much worse than that. But it is. We're in fact sitting at a 20% allocation this year, despite 2.5 million acre-feet of additional storage in Shasta. So where does that go? It's not coming to farms south of the Delta. It's going to meet water quality standards and fishery temperature standards through the balance of the year. And those are important things, but I think it really helps to illustrate how we're managing supplies. And it's important not to lose sight of the fact that this 2.5 million acre-feet is in addition to more or less the million that was outflow December, January, and February, and in addition to the Orville releases and Folsom and Yuba Accord and New Melones and the rest. So there's a lot of water being applied to environmental management. So the question that often comes up in this reality is, how are you all coping? What are the coping mechanisms? So just that briefly. I mean, clearly groundwater pumping is our primary tool. It was there before the projects came online. It's there today. There are areas in our region that can utilize that better than others. Some areas have water quality issues. Some areas have subsidence concerns. But it's a tool that we will have to continue to rely on. Carryover storage. Some farmers, some districts were able to purchase or conserve water last year that provided a critical initial supply this year to get started. Transfers historically have been very helpful, much more difficult to do now. Of course, it's dry this year, so there's much water required by transfers. It's more difficult to get a transfer approved. There's much more opposition. And then the cost of a transfer continues to increase, not only because of the shortages, but because of the losses occur because of depletions or illegal diversions. Water use efficiency, of course, we've been applying water use efficiency technology for over 20 years now, but it only goes so far. And we have fields that have state-of-the-art drip systems that are sitting dry because there's no water to put in those drip systems. Deficit irrigation, that's occurring now, will continue to occur, and ultimately land fallowing. And we're projecting approximately 200,000 acres of land fallowed, not quite as bad as 2009, but certainly not far behind. And so looking out and forward to next year, barring anything much better than normal rainfall, initial forecast projections suggest that we'll be beginning with a 0% allocation. So it's a difficult environment for us to work in, and sadly, it isn't just specific to 2003. The shortages that we experience on the west side are chronic. They've been in place over the last 20 years. And I think as we consider new and creative ways to, manage smarter, as I think David Guy put it earlier, we also need to sit down and consider how well the things that we're doing already are serving us. We've sat down through CVPIA, ESA, Clean Water Act, Water Quality Control Plan, and applied nearly 20 million acre-feet of water to the problem over the last number of years, billions of dollars. How are we doing? So I think it's time to sit down and not only assess what we can do better moving forward, but reassess what we're currently doing and how we can do that better. Notwithstanding these realities, there's clearly a strong call for more flow to be provided. There's significant debate, disagreement amongst the experts about what sort of benefits those will provide, for what species, when, what purpose are you trying to achieve. I think the good news in all of this is that this creative and collaborative discussion and approach that we're taking is being implemented all over. I mean, David and his panel did a great job of illustrating the sort of things that they're doing on the Sacramento. You'll hear from Tim later about the important things that Oakdale and South San Joaquin were able to do this year. And it's those kind of approaches that are going to be critical moving forward in the future, because frankly the blanket sort of approach, the prescriptive mandates that have been controlling the past have failed both water supply and the environment. So we have this collaborative science effort underway to close the gap of disagreement occurring with the collaborative adaptive management team as part of the remand of the biological opinions. The Bay Delta Conservation Plan has talked about a similar approach through decision tree. So these big questions about how much flow is right, will be tackled, and that gap of disagreement will be closed. The downside is it's going to take time. And that doesn't mean that we make indecision, that we are paralyzed by indecision in the meantime, but I think we do need to step back and recognize that whatever standards we're picking in the meantime are at best educated guesses. So a different approach is clearly needed moving forward. I think the creative, collaborative sort of models that are being established now are the right approach. We have great examples of success. The Bay Delta Accord, which is the foundation for D1641 Water Quality Control Plan that we're reviewing now. The Yuba Accord, which was spoken about very well earlier. And the Oakdale Irrigation District, South San Joaquin Irrigation District agreement for this year was very helpful. And so I just want to close by saying, why is it important? Ultimately, you all can create the room for these creative endeavors to exist. I know Terry and I, the members in our agencies are committed to working with folks, to bringing the resources that we can to help create these solutions, and looking forward to that. And I think at the end of the day, some folks, at least when they're talking about our